Hi and welcome to my Change Readiness Assessment mini masterclass. Let's get stuck right in. Okay, so first of all, let's think about when and why would we do a change readiness assessment? Okay, well, first things first, we get it done early doors before we start the kick-off process. And why is that? Because first of all, it's going to have an impact to our project planning. When we do the change readiness assessment, it's going to uncover some things that maybe we didn't know before that we're going to want to mitigate against or plan into our project plans, our action plans, and our communication plans. So let's get it done early on. Also, another reason to do it early on is because it could also have an impact on your timing. One thing that your change readiness assessment might uncover, that maybe there's other stuff going on in the organisation. Now's not the right time to implement another change. And if that's the case, maybe the change would be better received in a couple of months. So you don't want to hold your kick-off meeting and then find, oh, actually, we're going to have to delay the project for a couple of months because it's got a lot more chance of being successful if that's the case. Okay, so our change assessment is going to fall into two areas, and they are infrastructure and people, pretty broadly. And the first one of those that we're going to talk about is people. Okay, so first things first, do the employees understand the change itself? And how do they perceive the personal impact of that change? So now, when any of us hear about a change, the first thing that we always think about is, what's in it for me? And we might not be at the stage now where we're communicating that this is coming up to our employees, but we need to put ourselves into their position and think about, from their perspective, how are they going to be able to understand the change, why we're doing it, and what the impact on them is going to be. What do employees think about the organisation's readiness for change? Do they think that they're in an organisation that's perhaps been very steady away for a number of years, somewhere that's not really dealt with a lot of change, and they'd be concerned about implementing a big change? Or perhaps on the opposite end of the spectrum, they think that the organisation's gone through far too much change, and actually there's just not the capacity in the organisation to make another change just now. Hopefully they're somewhere in the middle. Maybe you've just finished one change, it went really well, and you're ready to take on the next thing. But that's an important factor to consider. Then think about what the employee's personal readiness for change is. What else have they got going on in their lives? Perhaps if you're dealing with an aging workforce, perhaps they're just thinking about their retirement and they don't want to go through a big change. So that's something that you need to consider. And then finally on this slide, what is the current mindset? What are the current attitudes? And what are the current beliefs? Do we have a positive attitude? Do people generally complain? Are they open to growth and new opportunities? All of that kind of stuff will either help your change in bed, or it'll be something that you're having to work against and mitigate. So it's worth thinking about that in advance as to how much of a change management and communication plan that you're going to have to put in place. Okay. So, also on people, we need to consider whether leadership are on board with the change, because most change is led from the top, and if leadership aren't on board, then you're going to really struggle to get this change through. Also, what's their leadership style? Are they collaborative, or is it very much a do and tell? Because that's going to impact how you think about your change communications and how you implement the change itself. And can that leadership team motivate the team to change? Do they have the skills and the technique and the relationships to be able to do that? Then at the next level down, are managers likely to resist change? So if you think about it, change comes from the top, but often it goes through that middle layer before it gets to the people on the ground. And those people on the ground, they're not stupid. If the managers don't believe the change, they don't believe in it, then they're going to pick up on that. And that's going to mean it's very difficult to embed the change. So we need to make sure that managers are on board as well. Also, we need to think about stakeholders. So there's always a customer at the end of every process and at the end of every change. So we need to make sure that they're fully on board as well. We need to think about the current behaviours and the current culture. Do people do what they're told, or are they very questioning? If they're very questioning, that's great, because it means that they'll question your project, they'll pick up issues for you, and you can build those into your project. And how have previous changes been led and received? Did they go really well, or were there issues? If there were issues, what lessons were learned from those, and how can we use that and build it into the project that we're doing this time? Okay. Finally, on people, do the team have change management capabilities? So do they know about change management processes and tools? So that's going to help them to plan and execute and deliver the change. Are there any other changes taking place right now that could impact the implementation of this change, or perhaps just cause a bit of change fatigue? Is there a skill or a competency gap if you're, for example, introducing a new ERP system? Do people know how to use that? Do you need to think about training? Or if it's a new process, is it a process that's similar to ones that have been used before? Or is it something where you're going to have to think about some additional training? Because often, that training is really important to make sure that the change sticks. Because if people don't know how to run the new piece of equipment, the new process, or whatever your change is, then it's not going to be sustainable. And then also on the people side, but also from other side as well, are there sufficient resources? Have you got enough people? Have you got a project team in place to be able to implement this? And do you have enough other resources as well, like budget? Do you have the money to do this? Okay. So from an infrastructure point of view, is the organisation prepared to incorporate this change into its existing culture and structure, or is there other work that you need to do to be able to fit this in? Are the existing communication processes sufficient to manage the change? Hopefully you're working in an organisation with great communication, regular, and you can just jump on the back of it and communicate your project. But if that's not the case, you're going to have to set up good communication channels so that you can let people know what's going on. Do we need any new infrastructure? So do we need any new computer systems, tools? Is there a room for the project team? Just like basic stuff like that. And so can you mitigate for any of those factors, any of the people ones or any of the infrastructure ones? You could do that early doors by just making sure that you've got these things in place. Okay, so what next? We're going to think about the people's personal readiness for change and whether it impacts the scope of the plan. So we talked at the beginning and said it may delay implementation. It may mean that we want to pilot the project first, or we want to introduce phased implementation, and that's all okay, and we can plan for that. And sometimes that can really be a positive. And it'll also help us to highlight focus areas for our change management strategy and allow us to prepare much better. And we can add into our project plan targeted strategies to address any gaps that our change readiness assessment has come up with. So we've answered, is now the right time? We're creating our targeted strategies and we know what we need to plan for. If you choose to work with me as a change management consultant, then you'll also get access to tools like this change readiness assessment, which helps you to formally assess your organisation's readiness for change, and also a number of other useful tools as well. If you want to discuss any of this any further, get in touch and let's chat. Otherwise, good luck with your change readiness assessments, and I hope they go well and add some value for you.